The Maine People Podcast, available everywhere. Click subscribe so you never miss an episode. Next guest up on the Maine People Podcast, one of the greatest writers of this century, and that's me talking. I don't know if anyone else will say it, but with so many New York Times bestsellers, Douglas Preston, welcome to the Maine People Podcast. Thanks for agreeing to be on. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. It's great to be on.
I went to the local bookstore to see how many of your books and make sure they had them on the shelf. And I took this video, and it literally looks like the shelf that's behind you.
Well, let's see. Wow.
Not bad for one bookstore.
Oh my God, I love this bookstore. Tell them I commend on their excellent literary taste.
I'll let them know. 29 New York Times bestsellers, 24 of which I have read, by the way. So that's not bad. But I have my work cut out ahead of me, I guess. I will say my first reading was this one.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, that's one of my favorites.
That's what got me sucked in. It's been called one of the 100 greatest mystery thrillers of all time. A very smart publisher of yours sent me a copy when the book came out. What was that, 2002? Sent me a copy for review for my morning radio show on WPOR. And that was a hardcover. That lost that in a house fire since then. I've repurchased because I've read this book, I don't know, quite a few times. That was a good start for you.
Well, thank you. I think that's one of our best books. We're actually working on another book in that particular series right now, Lincoln and I, called The Cabinet of Dr. Leng. And it extends the story of the Cabinet of Curiosities.
I'm sure that's been a question or a lot of questions from your fans over the years of, what came first? What was it like before?
Yeah, well, I can't say much about it because I don't want to give it away, but it definitely extends the story in a very disturbing direction.
Oh, all right. That's good. That's for good reading then. I want to take a look at your property here in Maine, since this is the Maine People Podcast. This is a pretty spectacular view. Your Maine connection home has a view like a postcard, but the property comes with a story, a multi-generational story, right? How did it come to be that you've got this little blessed piece of land in Maine?
Well, it's my wonderful grandfather, who in 1932 bought a farmhouse in Maine with a piece of land that went down to the shore for $5,000, and he had it as a vacation home for a while, and then he retired up there. And my parents retired there. My brother lives in Maine, in China, Maine, and is a doctor in Waterville. And I lived in Bristol, Maine, or Round Pond, Maine, with my family. We raised a couple of kids there, and all on this same wonderful piece of property, which I could never afford to buy now. But it was. I'm trying to pay the taxes on it, but anyway.
I'm sure the taxes are more than the original price of the land. Heck, a mailbox now is more than the original price of the land.
That is very true, actually. But that's okay.
Where are you?
Mind, as long as it goes to good things.
You're in New Mexico right now. Is that the other place you call home?
It is. Yeah, I spend the winters here and the summers and falls in Maine. Fall and summer in Maine, winter and spring in Santa Fe.
Now, for people who go to Florida, we call them snowbirds. What do you call people who go to Arizona for the winter?
Sensible.
What are you working? Intelligent. What are you working on right now in New Mexico besides the project you just had that you just mentioned, the current book? Are you working on something else?
I'm working on a solo novel, not with my writing partner Lincoln Child, which is, I started doing some research. Sometimes I write for the New Yorker magazine. I write nonfiction pieces about paleontology and archaeology. And I thought it'd be interesting to do a piece on the de-extinction research being done at Harvard now, at Harvard Medical School by George Church and others, on bringing back the woolly mammoth. And he's involved in this project funded by the Winklevoss brothers, who always seem to have their hand in the weirdest things. And now I didn't do a story for the New Yorker about it because I found it had already been very, very covered by other journalists, and I just didn't see a place for me to find something new. But as I was doing this research, I came up with an idea for a novel. And so now I'm working on that novel. It's a solo novel. I wish I could say it takes place in Maine, but it doesn't. It takes place in Colorado. And it involves the de-extinction of the woolly mammoth and some other Pleistocene megafauna. So it's not Jurassic Park at all. It's
Right? It's
very different.
but I mean, that
So
concept is certainly something we're all familiar with from Jurassic Park, so it's easily identifiable for people. And Maine probably wouldn't be the best setting. If I remember from when my kids loved dinosaurs, there were not a whole lot of dinosaurs this far north.
no, there weren't. Although the woolly mammoths did live quite far north, but they like open tundra. You know, they didn't live in the woods. They lived in open tundra or high meadows and things like that. But the interesting thing is this in our lifetime, maybe in mine and certainly in yours, we're going to see the recreation of the woolly mammoth. They are very close. They are really close, and they're well funded, and they've got the support of Harvard Medical School, and it's extraordinary. We're going to see this happen.
It's fascinating and terrifying at the same time, isn't it?
It is. I don't know how terrifying it is. I think it's fascinating. I'm not personally afraid of woolly mammoths myself, although if they're like African elephants, they're very dangerous animals because in Africa, the most dangerous animals are not the lions and the leopards and the cheetahs, but are the buffalo and the elephants.
Have you had a run-in?
Well, when I was a kid, my parents took us to Africa and we lived with the Luo tribe for a while. That was quite an experience. That's the tribe, by the way, that Obama's father comes from. And I remember the lions roaring at night, but at one point we were on safari and this bull elephant got a little pissed off and started flapping his ears and advancing at us. And I wasn't scared until I saw how scared our guide was. He was like, back up the car. Okay, okay, if he's scared, I'm scared.
Duly noted. Let's get out. Here's a picture of where you write in the state of Maine. This is great because it's so Maine to have this little writing shack like this. And thanks for letting me pull some of these pictures from your social media. This is, I don't know if you built this. This looks like the kind of thing that you could say like, yeah, me and some buddies got a 12 pack of beers and built this one weekend.
Yeah, we did. It's
No.
8 by 10. And it was not insulated at first. And I thought, well, I'll put a heater in there and I'll live out the winter. Well, the first winter started, and I was like, oh, I better get some insulation in this place because it's not keeping up with this electric heater. So we insulated it. I cut up a bunch of insulation and shoved it in between the framing,
Mhm.
and then I put a rug down on the floor. It's still a little chilly in the winter, but it works very nicely. It's out in the woods. And the great thing was it was just far enough into the woods so that people wouldn't come and bother me. You know, my kids, if they wanted to talk to me, they'd call me on my telephone. They wouldn't bother me.
That's very smart thinking. And I guess since you're in New Mexico, you don't really have to worry about whether the shack is heated or not.
Yeah, that's right. I don't. I must say though, I love that little space in Maine. It's my writing lair. It's great. It's and people say, well, how come you didn't put it on the water? Because we have a little bit of water frontage. And I said,
Mhm.
no way. I said that would be a disaster. I'd be looking out the window. So I put it off in the woods where you see it, where there's no view of the
Mhm.
water. And I remember one day about maybe 12 years ago, I was working away in my office. It was in the late winter, it was like February or early March. And I saw a movement in the window and I looked, and it was a bull moose looking in my window. And I just happened to have my camera with me in the office. And I took a bunch of pictures of him looking in the window. And then I came outside to take pictures, and I was worried I was going to frighten him away. But when I came outside, he looked at me and all of the hair came up on his spine. And he started advancing at me. And I wasn't sure what he was intending. This is a bull moose. I didn't know if he was going to kill me or if he had even worse thoughts in mind. So I quickly
Maybe thought you
jumped
were
back in.
pretty.
Yeah, that was my fear. But but it was funny. He hung around for a couple of days, and I had some hay in the barn because we had some rabbits and chickens and stuff. So I brought the hay out and tried to feed him hay. I left it for him, but he wasn't interested.
Yeah.
He just wanted to eat oak buds that were
Yeah.
in the bushes around.
We have squirrels and chipmunks and an occasional opossum and sometimes raccoons, and that's enough for me in our yard. That's it. I don't want the moose.
We had a
Um,
we had a fish we had a fisher at one point who lived in the old stone wall in the woods, and during that time we had that fisher, we had no squirrels. He ate them all. He chased them to the trees and killed them right there.
and if you had a small dog, you were probably pretty wary about that too.
Yeah, we had a big dog, but he was a big coward. Big see something and go running away.
Golden retrievers were a little more brave than that, but I guess not. I have a question and something I want to talk about in the next segment. You are far closer, hands-on to one of my favorite Maine things than I have ever been, and I'm going to address that with you, Douglas Preston, in the next segment.
The way my dad brought me up was always to work hard and to treat people well.
You ready to go for a ride?
We try to keep our goal to make people feel comfortable buying their cars and feel comfortable with the people they're working with.
Nice. Oh, it looks good over here.
So become part of our family. We really mean that. Without question, we're in this together.
We're going to take care of you and treat you like your family anyways.
This looks awesome.
Yankee Ford has so many people willing to help and make this tough time a little bit easier.
Radio207.com only plays original country music from Maine singers, songwriters, and bands. Streaming online and on your smart speaker. Radio207.com is on the air now. Radio207.com. Only Maine, only country music. Your next online event can be perfect thanks to virtualproductionsgroup.com. The Maine People Podcast couldn't happen without them, and they can make your remote streaming event absolutely technically perfect. High quality live and pre-recorded productions for corporate events, weddings, tournaments, charities, and more with virtualproductionsgroup.com. Maine People Podcast this morning with best-selling author, New York Times best-selling author, Douglas Preston, half a year Maine resident, and that's how you get to be on the Maine People Podcast. I want to ask you a question before I get to my other question. How do you feel about a Kindle reader, any e-reader, versus actually having a book in your hand? As the author, how do you feel?
Well, I'm all in favor of ebooks. I think it's a great innovation. I think it's wonderful that you can just press a button and boom, you've got the book. And I tried reading books on e-readers. I used Apple Books, not the Kindle, but when I used it on an iPad, I just couldn't do it. I just love that physical book. I would rather pay $15 for a physical book than get one for 99 cents as an ebook, because it's just the tactile, the feel of it. I remember where I am in the book. I can take it anywhere. I can read it in the bathtub. I can read it on the beach. I can take it out on my boat, drop it in the drop it in the water and fish it out again, and it's still good. Can't do that with a reader. E-reader.
No, I have made the switch, full confession, totally over to e-readers. Well, for the most part, but I struggle. I don't often remember the name of the book, the author of the book, because I don't see those things. When someone says, "What are you reading right now?" Sometimes I can't remember because I don't see it when I pick up that. Every time I pick up that book, it's right in front of me. And with the e-reader, it's not the same. Plus, I accidentally left mine on an airplane, so that wasn't very good. I bought Bloodless, downloaded it to the e-reader. I got on a plane and fell asleep, and then got off the plane and left it behind. So I haven't started that book yet.
Oh, I'm so sorry. You lost both your e-reader and the book. Oh,
Yeah, when I get a new
tragic.
reader, I'll be able to download the book again. I won't have to pay for it again. But let's take a look at this picture, because your area of Maine, along the Damascotta River in that area, are absolutely the best oysters in the world. And your wife had at one point her own oyster farm. Does she still?
That we're in her boat on the Damascotta River, and those are her oysters. She's got about 3 or 4 thousand oysters that she raises, She has a permit from the Department of Marine Services, or whatever they call that,
Yep.
the Marine Licensing Board. And boy, we have all the oysters we want. I have to open them up though. You should see all the scars on my hands. I'm getting better at it.
That's something my wife has, repeatedly told me not to do because she knows I'll get that.
We're here in her Carolina skiff, and she's just jumped out one of her oyster bags, and she's sorting through it, taking out the bigger ones, moving the smaller ones to other bags, and then they float in the river. And then in the wintertime, she sinks them down to the bottom of the river so that they won't get affected by fresh water or ice. And then
Mhm.
in the spring, she picks up and sets them up, and she goes out there every week or two and collects a bunch of them, and we eat them and we give them away to our friends, and it's just fun. We can't sell them because she has a recreational license, not a commercial, but we sure have fun eating them. And we have a good friend who makes the most fabulous hot sauce. It's
Mm.
called Chips Sweet Heat. I highly recommend it. He lives in Hope, Maine, and he makes this sauce with chilies grown in Maine. And boy, I'll tell you, he finds some really hot chilies in Maine. It is the best hot sauce in the world. I promise you. Chips Sweet Heat.
I
Hard to
believe
find
you.
anyway. That's paired with our oysters is about the best thing you can ask for.
How did you guys get started? How did Christine get started doing that? What was just a whim one day? Like, you know what? I love oysters. Let's have our own little oyster farm.
Yeah, well, it was when we were living in Maine year round, and she was working. Well, she was on the board of the Damascotta River Association, and the DRA had decided to have a little recreational lease that people could use. So she started using it, and then the DRA decided not to do that anymore. So she went out and got her own lease, and that's how it started. That was about 12 or maybe 10, 15 years ago, and she's been doing it ever since. It's a lot of hard work. I mean, those oysters are sharp, and it's anyone who oysters will tell you this is not all that recreational. I go out there and I'm cut at the end of the day. You're cut from these sharp oysters, and you got to wear gloves, and you're covered with mud and everything.
But it's worth it, isn't it? For just that taste.
Well, I'm telling you, to go out on the water in her little Carolina skiff and
Mhm.
hang out for 4 hours and mess around and bring lunch and maybe a couple of cold beers and haul oysters. I mean, nothing is that's life as it should be.
And that's what it says when you come across the border right through the state, the way life should be. Well, you know what? I brew my own beer and you've got the oysters, so we'll have to talk later.
Well, come on down. You bring the beer, we'll supply the oysters.
I love it. I wanna show you this, video. This is from one of your books a couple years ago, little video teaser with a great view of a Maine landmark, your publisher keeping you connected to the state of Maine, and maybe you weren't even, aware. We'll take a look at the video here.
From best-selling authors Preston and Child, A Secret Chamber, a mysterious shipwreck. Every lie brings Special Agent Pendergast closer to a town's shocking truth. Crimson Shore, on sale now.
I didn't even realize that was the same lighthouse on the cover of the book, but that's right there at Fort Williams and Cape Elizabeth. That's Portland Headlight. Even though that's not where the book is set, kudos to your publisher for putting it in there.
Yeah, the book is set. I hate to tell you all this, but the book is set in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Now I do have set in Maine. I've got quite a few, several. So, but that one is the only one we set in Massachusetts because it involves witches
Mhm.
and the Salem Witches, and that did not occur in Maine. Thank God.
No, well, thank goodness it didn't. I'm gonna skip ahead to that because I wanted to ask you about that. That was that book was set, in Massachusetts, and it was later in life that you discovered you actually are related 8 generations or so ago, however many, to one of the Salem witches who was tried and hung as a witch.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, there's Samuel Wardwell. Well, I have this very energetic cousin who traces our ancestry, God knows, all over the place. And she was so excited. We got this email to all the family. We are directly related to he was a great, 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 great grandfather, and he was hung as a witch, Samuel Wardwell. But he did have a couple of kids, and she was able to trace our ancestry directly back to one of these kids, along with half of everyone else in Massachusetts, by the way. They're claiming to be descended, but she really, I believe her because she does very good research.
Has genealogy ever been an interest of yours, or you're sticking with archaeology?
Well, it's always interesting to talk to my cousin who's really into it, and all the bad people in our ancestry. I mean, it isn't just this witch, but there was some opium addict in Vermont who was a murderer. Also, we're related to Emily Dickinson. That actually I knew because we knew that in the family, not directly, but collaterally. And we're also related to a man named Robert Letou Dickinson, who was also related to Emily Dickinson, who was America's first sexologist. He was a doctor, and he was the first doctor before Masters and Johnson, before all those who do research on human sexual behavior. And I have some of his books, and boy, they're really X-rated.
I don't see any of that coming into any of your books that you're going to be writing.
No,
Right.
Lincoln and I don't like sex scenes at all. We argue about who's going to do it, him or me, but we don't really have sex scenes in our books. We have nice, clean books.
I wasn't planning on, because I'm sure you've been asked the question a million times and answered it in a million other podcasts and interviews, but how do two people write such great books together like that, apart? I don't understand how it can work.
Oh, it's a strange way of working. When Lincoln and I get together to talk about books, we open a bottle of single malt whiskey and we have a little nip and we start talking about what fine fellows we are, and we start complaining about this and that, and no work gets done. So the only work that ever is when we're 2,000 miles apart. We're 1,000 miles apart. He's in Florida and I'm in Maine. And we work using the internet, and we basically outline the book together. He'll take a selection of chapters. I'll take a selection. I'll write my chapters. He writes his. Then we swap. And he rewrites my beautiful Shakespearean level prose, which is very disturbing. And I have to rewrite his Latin prose. Thank God he's not on the podcast to correct me here. No, but actually we rewrite each other vigorously. And as a result, I think we get something that's better than what we could have produced individually. It's tight. The plotting is tight. That people like our books because they don't fall apart at the end.
Right. I love them, and that's why I've read 20 of them and 4 of yours. One of yours, this Lost City of the Monkey God, which is the most fascinating story, and I don't even know if you can condense this story into a couple of minutes. But archaeology has always been a love of yours. It's had little bits and pieces in a lot of books that you've written. But taking this trip and finding this lost city is one of the most fascinating stories of the last decade.
Well, it is incredible to think that in the 21st century, you could actually find a lost city somewhere on the surface of the earth. But that's exactly what happened. And it was in the thickest jungles of the La Mosquitia region in Honduras, in a mountain valley that is actually one of the few places on earth unexplored by science. And it was discovered not on the ground, but using a LiDAR scan from the air. They found this entire city. It covers hundreds and hundreds of acres. This is a huge city, buried in the thickest jungle in the world, practically. So it was discovered by air, and then we went in 3 years later on the ground. Here's a picture of us moving up the river. It just was very interesting to be in a place where human beings hadn't been in 500 years. It was so unspoiled that the animals had never seen people before and just walk right up to you. It was like
Wow.
those Jehovah's Witnesses pamphlets where the lions and the lambs and the people are all together. It was like that. It was unbelievable. Of course, when the mountain lion or the puma came, we weren't all thrilled about that, but you can read all, or the poisonous snakes. Oh my God.
Mm.
Just poisonous snakes, fair lances. You can read all about it in the book. I won't ruin your dinner right now, I
Thank
guess.
you. Thank you. There are pictures online, I'll say, and the book, The Lost City of the Monkey God, and also a documentary of the same name that's available on Fubo TV. Um, Douglas Preston, you write fiction, you write fact, you write about things you love, but what is it when you write that you hope to inspire in people?
Well, I think an inspiration to really go out there and explore the world and not to stay at home. I mean, my archaeological pieces for the New Yorker have taken me all over the world. I mean, not only to Honduras, but also into an Egyptian tomb. I actually had the I was actually here I am in the Galapagos Islands. I'm mugging around in an old lava flow. I was the first one in the room of an Egyptian tomb in 3,500 years. It had been robbed in antiquity, but that
Of
was
course.
exciting. That was like a childhood dream, and going to Cambodia and finding temples in the jungle and stuff like that. It's I've been very lucky.
You inspired me, I will say, years ago when my wife and I took our kids on our first family trip to New York City. In New York City, I said the one thing I need to see that I must see, we have to go to the Museum of Natural History, and part of that was inspired by your writing. So I want to thank you for that because that was a pretty great day for the family. So I love that.
Thank you.
Some inspirations are small and some are a little bit larger. In the next segment with Douglas Preston, one of the most beautiful pictures you'll ever see, and the reason why he cannot write from this location on his property in Maine, coming up.
The way my dad brought me up was always to work hard
Hi, Dad.
and to treat people well.
You ready to go for a ride?
We try to keep our goal to make people feel comfortable buying their cars and feel comfortable with the people they're working with.
Nice. Oh, it looks good over here.
So become part of our family. We really mean that. Without question, we're in this together.
We're going to take care of you and treat you like your family anyways.
This looks awesome.
Yankee Ford has so many people willing to help and make this tough time a little bit easier.
Radio207.com only plays original country music from Maine singers, songwriters, and bands. Streaming online and on your smart speaker. Radio207.com is on the air now. Radio207.com. Only Maine, only country music. Your next online event can be perfect thanks to virtualproductionsgroup.com. The Maine People Podcast couldn't happen without them, and they can make your remote streaming event absolutely technically perfect. High quality live and pre-recorded productions for corporate events, weddings, tournaments, charities, and more with virtualproductionsgroup.com. Douglas Preston is with us this morning. I'm used to saying that because I'm on the radio. It's not actually even morning, but shout out to my partners and a radio show on WPOR. Douglas Preston is the guest on the Maine People Podcast, and this photo, one of the most incredible rainbow photos that you took from your property. That view in Maine is what people think of Maine when they're coming, and as you can attest to, it's real and it happens frequently enough.
Yeah, that is. Oh boy, what a beautiful. That actually took that actually from my brother's property. His
Okay.
property is right next to. Because of course, with my grandfather, we divided up the property into three pieces because there were three of us, and this is from my brother's property. But that's Loud's Island out there, and Bar Island, and then there's Hermit Island off to the right. The right-hand side of that rainbow, I think, is just coming down on Hermit Island. It might be, or that even might be Monhegan. So it's hard to tell in that picture, but I think that's Hermit Island, and then Haddock Island.
You spent so much of your life in Maine, like you said, raising your family here by choice because it's different than other places you lived, because of the lifestyle, because of the attitude, because of people's mentality. What drew you here besides, your grandfather's property? Nobody wants to live next door to their brother.
I'd have to say the people in Maine are really independent. They are independent thinkers. They are uh, independent in the way they live their lives, and I like that. I really like that. I like the rural, uh, you know, beauty of Maine too. I mean,
Mhm.
the seacoast. I love the ocean. The ocean is just, I don't know what I do. I have to get, it's like my fix. Every year I have to be at the ocean. But I guess those things, the people and the beauty of the landscape, are the things that I love about Maine.
Do you think it affects your writing? Is your writing different when you're, in the writing shack that we saw earlier, or you're looking at the water, or you're at your home in Maine? Is your writing different than when you're somewhere else because you're different up here?
I think a little bit. I in Santa Fe, I've got an office that's kind of downtown Santa Fe, and it's not rural, and it's a nice office, but it's not it's not like my shack in Maine. I love that shack. That is very inspiring to me. And when I go out there, I, when you're writing a novel, you kind of go into this world that's a different world, but it's a good place to travel in time and space in that little shack. And I made it small. I don't like to write in a big room because I don't like the feeling that someone might be looking over my shoulder. So
Hmm.
that shack is only me. A second person cannot fit in there. So
Or a moose.
so if when people come, we have to go outside, and then they have to get eaten alive by mosquitoes, which is fine with me because then they don't stick too long.
Also, just a part of living in Maine, right? Because you can't avoid those either. It's almost
Oh,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, you had a story.
My brother's a doctor in Maine. Is an avid fisherman. He once said, "Thank God for the black fly." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "If it weren't for the black fly, Maine would look like Virginia Beach."
We don't need that many people, do we? It's almost, summertime. Does that mean you'll be headed back to Maine for the summer season?
It is, yeah. We're going to be heading back next month, and looking forward to it. It's very
Well,
dusty and windy here, right? So,
that does not sound nice at all. So, uh,
and we have forest fires. We have terrible forest fires right now in New Mexico. I don't know if you've been reading about it, but when the wind is blowing from the mountains into Santa Fe, we're cloaked in smoke. It's really awful.
no one's forcing you to stay, and it's a pretty nice spring day here in Maine.
You're tempting me.
Douglas Preston, it's been a pleasure to have you on the Maine People Podcast and super interesting. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you enjoy your summer when you get back to Maine this year.
Well, thank you, John. I really enjoyed this conversation we've had.
We talk about Bigfoot, making music, and UFOs. Yep, all with one guest, Maine musician Tobin McAllister on the next Maine People Podcast coming up Thursday.